Hello, welcome. My name is Nolafis, and this is part 2 of making a map from scratch. If you haven't seen the first part, that is where I built the route, and now I'm going to work on the scenery. So if you haven't seen the route being built, then might want to check out part 1 if you want to see the route get built. I basically just screen recorded whenever I worked on this map. So in part 2 with the scenery, you're going to see all my failed attempts and everything leading up to my final iteration of the scenery. I'm really proud of it. I love the way it turned out. And I hope that you guys maybe get a little bit of experience seeing maybe what someone else does for their scenery, the thought process, all that good stuff. If I sound a little stuffy, I do apologize. I've been sick the past week, and I'm finally getting over it, but my voice isn't quite there yet, but I thought it was good enough, and I didn't want to wait anymore to record this video, so hopefully it's not too bad. Most of the commentary, the actual commentary in the middle of the video, was recorded before I got sick, so that stuff will be fine, but for the beginning and ends, I might sound a little stuffy. Hopefully it's not too bad. But with that out of the way, let's get started. And we are going to get started by looking at me. This is me during my stream. If you do want to check out my stream, then I stream every Wednesday night, and I do viewer map reviews, so you can submit your maps and receive feedback on how they are doing. But besides that, and this isn't just an advertisement for my stream, you'll notice what I'm doing now is I'm kind of just placing stuff that I know I'll want something there, because you want the scenery to kind of break up the eyesight. Basically just making it so that they aren't just staring at the walls of the stadium the entire time. And having the pillars there is just kind of marks that I want something here. And then what I'm doing is I'm filling out the bottom to just kind of give a floor, something to work with. You know, it's right now I'm not in the detail work. I don't really have a plan for the scenery. I'm just going to build, and then I'm going to see if I like it, basically. And that's kind of just what I'm doing. Also, that's kind of satisfying, just watching all the stuff get filled in. Uh, anyway. So a lot of this, especially in the beginning, is just going to be me throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. So I have a big rectangle. I got some pillars. It's a start, you know. I'm going to try to build a corner piece over here that's going to go in all 4 corners, something to help encase the map. Yep. So, I mean, the big thing is, I mean, you don't want just walls, like blank walls everywhere. The big thing, especially if you've seen my scenery video, if you do struggle with scenery, I do recommend checking out my scenery video. I think it is a really good resource, especially since there's not a lot of competition for that resource. But to start off, I'm going to try to block just these basic eye lines. And then I'm also going to try to add a bit of support to the track itself. And that's generally a really good place to start. Is look at those big open like line of sights. I think that's what that's what I was trying to say. I have line of sights. Whatever. Maybe I should have waited a few more days. I can't I can't talk right now. And then also look at where the track needs support. So here I saw that a lot of I just supported the black platform. I'll go in and support more of the track later. Also chatting with my stream a little bit, so I'm not working at peak efficiency here. But just going around and seeing what large structures I can build. And here I'm going to add more to the corners. And basically the only idea that I have is that I know I want the scenery to be black and green with white and a little bit of yellow as the supporting colors. So I'm going to be sticking to that. And other than that, I don't have a clue. I'm just going to copy this design for all 4 corners, and we'll see if it sticks. And so coming over here, I notice that this is a lot of floating. I'm going to try to get rid of some of that floating here. Make this look a little more supported throughout everything. And I mean, if you're like me, then you absolutely struggle with scenery. It's the hardest thing about mapping to me. I struggle with it so much. It's not until recently that I actually really felt like I got anywhere with scenery. So, yeah, this is also why I'm making this video, is to help people just kind of like see the process, and that maybe it's not entirely. It's really easy to look at the finished product of a map and just be like, oh yeah, they put a lot of work into it, and they just built it. But it's another thing to watch and go through the entire process of what works, what doesn't work. Because I can tell you right now, a lot of these things that I'm building, they aren't staying. They are not staying at all. But I take the aspects of what I liked about each iteration, and I keep that, and I kind of get rid of the rest. And so here I'm just kind of going with the basic fact of this. I want this to look a bit more supported, and I like how it looked on the other aspects, so I'm just applying it to the rest of the map as well. You can see me taking drinks of water because it's important to stay hydrated. Make sure to stay hydrated. But here, one thing I'm thinking is that it can be really difficult to tell where the slope, where everything ends on these black platform pieces. And especially since I have a dip, you see after that turn that I have the dip that I want the car to go down. Elevation can be difficult, especially when everything is just that solid black color. So I'm adding these lights for 2 reasons. One, I want to make I think it would just look cool. And 2, this is going to serve a function to help guide the player on where exactly, I guess, how exactly you can take this turn. Because obviously, with these turns, you want to take them as tight as possible. You don't want everything to just be super wide. But it can be difficult to tell how tight you're supposed to take the turn. Does it work throughout everything? And so I'm going to add some barriers to this. That way they can't just skip at the end of this turn and fall down awkwardly on that ramp, slight elevation change piece right there. I don't know what it's called. And of course, using white as that accent color. I actually really like how this is turning out so far. Yeah, so I'm just making sure that what you can and can't do is clear, because scenery isn't there just to make the map look good. It can also be there to serve a really good function of guiding the player through, helping them see where the correct lines are, and in some cases it can also help prevent shortcuts. If you notice the map could possibly be shortcut. I don't think I necessarily have to worry about that here. I mean, I say that, but then you look at the world record after this video is released, and there's going to be a shortcut. Whenever you say that there's not going to be a shortcut, there's always someone finds a way. There's always someone smarter than you. We're just better. I'm just trying to help guide the player on what is happening throughout everything and show them where I want them to go. And plus, honestly, the lights are a really good way just to show that little extra bit of detail. It's kind of easy, and it makes them look. Oh, there's my cat. He's actually sitting on my lap right now as I record this, sleeping. But yeah, lights are a super easy way to make things look cool. At least I think they look cool. Maybe I spam them a little too much. In this map, I probably do. I probably do spam them a little too much. But oh well, okay? I think it looks cool. Can't hold that against me. But you see how I took that. I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing with the black platform. So I kind of stopped working on that. And I liked how the lights turned out. So I'm adding more to that as well. Speaking of scenery that serves a function, this green pillar appears right after a drift. Well, appears right before a drift, I should say, but you jump into the drift. I wanted to show the players where they should be aiming for to get a decent drift started, and that's where the green pillar comes in. So you're if you're going to play this map, know that at least for the first little bit, until you get the hang of the map, there might be a better line for it, but I placed the green pillar specifically there so you can aim for and execute a decent drift. So I'm just going more for the light railings because I think they look cool, and it's a good starting point. You know, I can base other things off of that, because oftentimes what it is what scenery is you pick an aspect that looks cool and you just expand upon it, and that's it. Even if you're going for more abstract scenery, you want that kind of constant same theme throughout everything, which is why I choose and stick to a very specific color scheme. And part of the reason why I add a bunch of lights, and also the other reason is just because it's super easy and I don't have to think about it too much, because scenery is so hard. I struggle with it so much. Also, I really like the pattern that this creates when you overlap these half circles. I just think it looks cool. And once I'm done with this, I feel like I'm in a pretty good, I have a good start to what I want this map to look like, what I want it to be. Just kind of lining everything up. Because this is about, this is where the stream ends, so. Yeah, I placed some more. I don't want just floating pieces, so I'm going to support this piece right here. And I'll worry more about it later. But for now, just looking for it to be supported. And that's it for the stream footage. So goodbye, Facecam me. If you want to see more of Facecam me, then go follow me on Twitch. But here, I'm still sketching and like the big blocks of what I want. Here, at least to start, I'm still not good at scenery. I don't have a technique or anything like this. I'm just trying to place out big blocks of where I want stuff to be. So like the outline of the map, I kind of have an idea that I want a lot of walls that block vision, but the walls can't be flat. I want a lot of stuff going on, lots of stuff happening at various depths. If you've seen my scenery video, then you could say I want a big variety of elevations, all that good stuff. But that can be maybe a little easier said than done. It can be tricky. And it's interesting for me to go back and watch this footage, because I'm watching the scenery that I'm putting in now, and it's I'll make maybe a couple changes, maybe more than just a couple changes. So it's interesting for me to look and see what I was thinking. And now that I am looking at this, I am thinking, what on earth was I thinking for a lot of this stuff? And I try to cut out most of it, which is why you'll see some fade transitions, but you will see me just moving the camera around, panning it quite a bit, and it's because like I had no clue what I want for this. And maybe this is something that once I do get better at scenery, once I keep working at it, and I'll get some like more comfortable with it and what I want to execute, then maybe I'll get better at just immediately pulling out ideas. But one thing I did want to mention is the reason why I put that big loop hole right next to the checkpoint was because if I am going to restrict what the player can see coming through that checkpoint, such as putting that small half pipe thing on top of the checkpoint, that's going to block the player's view of what's coming up next. And so I put the big circle hole thing in the wall right next to the checkpoint to the right of it as you're driving through the map. That way the player can still see what's coming up ahead, and they'll know that they should be moving towards the right side of the road. So as you are placing in scenery, you want to kind of maybe not like wow the player with visuals, you know, that might be too high expectations, but you want the player to like what they're looking at, you know? So it's important to try to make things look good, but at the same time, you don't want everything to be so restricted and blind that it kind of ruins the map. Because one of the pitfalls, one of the pitfalls that a lot of people will fall into is that they'll add so much scenery that it can make the entire route just blind and actually can make it pretty difficult to see what's going on. So I'm trying to avoid that here by having everything kind of take place in large sections. You can see I'm already starting to place walls in between various elements of the track and where I want things to be. Although it can be difficult to try to come up with like a big cohesive thing. Like right at this point, I'm just placing down shapes, trying to think of what would look good, and hopefully, you know, it does look good. Just various little rooms, little chambers that everything's going to take place in. And surprisingly enough, the start area was actually pretty difficult for me. I'll do a few more things here, but just trying to have this idea in the first place was a little weird. I remember struggling quite a bit with the starting block specifically. Because here I'm basically the point of the scenery that I'm adding here is I want to restrict the eyesight into what I want the player to see. Because looking at absolutely everything, the entire map, it can look kind of bland if you're not careful. So I'm trying to restrict the eyesight of the player and make sure that they're looking at nothing but interesting objects. But at the same time, you can't just put a bunch of flat walls because that's not interesting. You want to make sure that people are, you know, looking at good stuff. And you can see this is where I start to get the idea of maybe putting in a ceiling and making it kind of like an indoor track. Although I already had that idea. That's what the circles and the roof were supposed to be. I mean, the roof is going to be there, and then the circles are going to be holes in the roof. I thought that would be a pretty cool visual. Spoiler alert, it is a pretty cool visual, at least in my expert scenery opinion. Yeah, but a lot of the footage here might just be me panning around trying to figure out what on earth I'm going to do. I figured if that's going to be kind of its own sectioned off room, and I already have an idea, you'll see more, but I want it to be dark. But if that's going to be its own section off room, then that needs to have a more narrow entrance. And here I drove into the GPS, that way I can get a good clean view on what a decent run is going to look like, what the players' visuals are as they drive through the map. And I actually kind of like that. A lot of people might not put the GPS or stuff like that, like the lighter media tracker stuff in until closer to the ending of the map. But I actually really like having that resource of you can place some scenery, and then instead of having to drive the map a couple times, try to get a clean run, see what people are most likely going to notice when they drive the map, just driving into the GPS and having that as a nice visual standpoint. But here I'm adding some more walls, getting rid of some of the stuff that I put in first. You don't have to keep every idea that you have. Sometimes the ideas just don't work out, and that's okay. You can't be afraid to delete what you've already built, especially if you think you have a better idea that you're going to replace it with. So I guess maybe that's another tip for scenery building, is don't get overly attached to everything you've already placed. You know, sometimes you have better ideas down the road, sometimes some ideas don't work out, and that's all fine. You don't have to worry about that. But now that the roof is coming on, you can kind of see what I was going for with the big circles that are floating up in the air. And I actually really like the way this is turning out, even with just the preliminary stuff, kind of just viewing on the inside before any of the decorations. I like the way the roof is taking shape. But there are a couple pitfalls that I have to be aware of, and that is with big buildings, it's really easy to just make huge flat surfaces and just not think anything more about it, when that's really not a good thing. With big buildings, especially, you do have to be intent in adding a variety of surfaces, a variety of levels, you know, all that stuff. It's actually, ironically enough, back when I played a lot of Minecraft, when I wanted to make my buildings look better, I looked up, like, architecture, a little bit of architecture stuff, about, as much as someone playing Minecraft will look into it. But I did learn quite a few things about, like, adding the variety to buildings that I just talked about, adding, making sure that your building isn't just a big square. I know when I placed the foundation earlier in the stream footage, I did just end up making a big rectangle. Oh, here I'm trying to make this room super dark, and I want to try to illuminate the. I'll talk about more about that in just a moment, but. With buildings, you don't want everything to just be a giant square, or like a cube or anything like that. It's not visually interesting. It's not visually appealing. It's just kind of bland. And there are a lot of maps that are being made in Trackmania, and if you want to stand out, you kind of have to, you got to do some stuff. You can't just build a giant cube, stuff your map in there, and call it good, because there's a bunch of walls and everything. Instead, you got to do some creative stuff. And a good way to add variety to a building is just kind of make some weird shapes with it and see what you can do with it. I have lots of wings. There are some arches. There are some sharper corners in there, some weird kind of pockets to the building that I'm adding. And it's all intentional, because sometimes you got to be a little creative. Here, I want to make sure that the darkness of this room, I don't want the roof to be visible from the light on the path. And I want to make sure to put a lot of light on the road itself, even though I want the rest of the room to be dark. And it's because during Track of the Day, nearly every single nighttime map will have someone complaining on Reddit that the map is just way too dark. And even if the map is fine for the majority of players, there is a lighting bug where some maps just appear super dark for some players. The shadows are really dark, and the only way to combat that is by just adding more lights, which is also why you'll see some people complaining that Cup of the Day maps are just way too bright in the first place. But I mean, I'd rather have a map that's too bright than a map that I literally can't see where I'm driving. So here, I'm trying to pull up the roof a bit. I'm pulling back this back wall here. That way, the light from the road doesn't splash onto the various walls and surfaces. So I can get that illusion of kind of like transferring to a void. Also, I'm calculating shadows a lot so I can see it. And this looks pretty good, except for that hole in the wall real quick. So we'll calculate shadows again. And I'm pretty happy with it. I think it's about as good as I'm going to get it for now. I don't want to extend the roof too much, because I kind of like the idea of the players finishing the map by jumping through that finish circle onto kind of like the roof of the building or whatever this is, honestly. So I like that idea. I want to keep it, so I'm kind of building with that in mind. Shuffling some things around, keeping what I like, getting rid of what I don't like. Now I'm working on closing this room off to the outside world. Slowly but surely it's coming together, and so once I'm done with that, kind of like walling that section off, I go to walling some more sections off. Kind of just mapping out. I'm leaving myself pockets, as I said before, just for kind of like the variety. Maybe some, I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. I don't have a plan, but you know, I'll probably come up with something. And worst case scenario, I can just get rid of that pocket later if I just really can't do anything with it. Yeah, scenery is, oh, scenery is so hard for me. This is actually the first map. If you, I know I've brought this up before, but my recent scenery video, this is the first map that I made after getting done with that video. So I felt like there was a little bit of added pressure on, well, I made a scenery video, so I have to just go all out on scenery, at least on one map. And so this is the map that I decided I was going to go all out, and I was going to see what I could do with scenery and to see if I could really make something that I was super proud of how it turned out and looked. So here I'm trying to make it look like the building is somewhat structurally sound. It's pretty easy to add scenery that way, where you just look at some things and see how you can support it. It's a good way to add that kind of extra bulk, that heft that you might want in some of the maps. That way the map doesn't just look like it's floating or like this, unless, of course, you're going for that vibe. But you want the map to look supported, helps make it look, I mean, not necessarily realistic, because we don't necessarily care about Trackmania, but it helps with the kind of illusion that this could be like a real map. Hard to describe, but I don't know, maybe I made sense somewhere along the way. And you might notice in this section, there's a lot more, I'm doing a lot more cutting of the video than in the previous sections. And it's because for a lot of this, I just freeze and I just think, and I'm just zooming around the map, trying to think what else I could add. Here I decide I'm just going to go for the roof. I'm going to roof this section off next. And while I'm doing all this stuff, I'm normally just sitting at my computer, chilling. I'll have a YouTube video playing in the background. And honestly, with this map, I kind of learned that, you know, scenery building doesn't necessarily have to just be like stressful. It can just be chill. And working on the scenery for this, even though it was very challenging, specifically at some points where I just ran out of ideas, it was actually pretty chill and, dare I say, fun. Sometimes. Other times I was a bit frustrated with how I couldn't just make things look good, or ran out of ideas and whatnot. But we'll get more to that later. Right now, I'm just focusing on blocking all the major sections in. I do have a little bit of a background, like drawing and that kind of stuff, and I'm kind of doing this. I'm kind of looking at scenery the same way that I would work on a drawing, which is just block in the major stuff first, and then you can go through and layer, highlight, detail, all that good stuff. I mean, when I say I have like a background in drawing, I'm not talking about like a legit like school background. I'm more just talking about yeah, just casual. Used to do it a bit of as a hobby. Here, I'm really liking how this is turning out. I am trying to keep some consistent themes throughout the entire thing, so you will notice multiple circles in the roofs that I've placed all over. And that is to, try to keep that consistent theme. Because even if you have something that's much more abstract, even if you have something that's much more abstract, you still want something to tie everything together, so it's not just a random mishmash of objects. Even if the theme is just uh, circle holes in the roof. You gotta go for something, right? Even if there's not really a lot of color or anything just yet, honestly, I am liking the way that this is turning out. And I remember building this, I was like, okay, this is turning out pretty cool. I might be able to actually do something cool with this map anyway, despite my lack of scenery skills. So now that I've blocked off pretty much everything that I want on the outside of the map, I'm just cleaning up. You'll notice I'm taking down the structures that I added during this the stream section of the scenery building, and sometimes that's just what you got to do. The structures ended up not working out, as I said before. You can't be afraid to cut. So I'm going to take that down. It also kind of just makes the map look a little less bulky, and I'll zoom out a little bit on the entire building here, which I think that looks pretty cool. I added a little bit of stuff. I think for this, I forgot to record the beginning section of this scenery building recording. So I did add a little bit of green in here because, as I said before, I am going for the color combination of black and green with white and a little bit of yellow as some accent colors here. And here I'm flexing the PC track builder by doing some free blocking. So sorry, console players. Maybe someday. Although that seems like it'd be difficult to implement. In my opinion, I think ghost block should definitely be a thing in the console editor at the very least. That should happen. Here I'm just going for trying to see different effects, different colors. I decided to go obviously with the green one. Now this is the point where I have a lot of the large blocking done. I'm just trying to add some texture, some details. That way people aren't just staring at large pieces of just wood, wall, and everything. It's just going to be me testing a bunch of stuff, see what I like, see what I don't like, and I do actually really like that green circle highlight that I have there. I think that looks pretty good. You can see me getting rid of some of the stuff that I added before, just, refining some stuff, adding some signs, trying to see what looks good, what I can do. Moving some stuff over to help create a little bit of texture. Here's something you can do to help, instead of just giant wood panels, you can use the different wooden support blocks to help create a little bit of texture if you are just staring at a flat wall. That's what I decided to add in between those two large holes in the wall. And this, I'm just carrying over the accents of the holes in the roof, which I do like. I do think that looks pretty cool. Just double checking that, it all looks good. And at this point, I'm starting to think that, this might actually be coming together a little bit. I might actually be able to finish this map, which is a huge improvement from the frowny face, if you remember me putting that in. I don't think I was recording at the time, but there was another spot that that I ended up building a frowny face into the map, and each time I built a frowny face was me heavily considering just giving up on the map, which I am glad I did not. I am glad that I stuck through it and did not give up on the map. But yeah, I definitely built more than one brownie face when working on this. So if you are also in the same boat where you are trying really hard on a map and things just aren't coming together, just don't quit. Don't quit just yet. Sometimes all you need is just take a break for a day or two, and sometimes, some ideas, uh, something will come to you. Or you can hand the map off to other people, see if they have any suggestions, anything they would do. So now, the way I'm deciding to tackle this is definitely a big, I guess, this is definitely a big map to be adding scenery to, especially for someone who does not consider themselves to be a scenery person. So this is a lot of work that I stacked on myself, and it's very easy to just kind of give up and become overwhelmed by everything that's happening. And so what I'm trying to do now is just focus on one room at a time. And it helps a lot to just break up the track like that, break it up into workable sections. That way you aren't just completely overwhelmed by absolutely everything that's happening. And just to give yourselves little goals on what you need to work on. So right now, this room looks pretty dark. So my current goal is to add lights. So I tried adding some more aesthetic lights at first, but I was soon just like, it no, I did. I was quickly running out of ideas on how to add lights that looked good. So instead, I just added a lot of lights, regardless of how they looked, and I wanted to just I'll make it look good later. Right now, I've got to be functional over fashion, and by just spamming a bunch of lights everywhere, that really did the trick. This room is much more lit up than it was previously. I'm very happy with that. And also, the holes in the roof will help light up some different things as well. So as we head into the dark room, you can see now why I wanted it to be dark, and that was for a bunch of these light spheres just to be kind of floating around, as I think that visual would look really cool. And there I calculated the shadows after only placing a few to make sure that I was placing the light blocks that did not give off light themselves. So I wanted to make sure I was doing that right. And placing a variety of those green and white spheres all around, make it look pretty cool. And placing those kind of, because I don't want just one big room full of those. I kind of want more of those. More of those throughout the map. That way, the idea looks a little less disjointed through everything. So that gave me another idea of putting more of those into kind of like a bubble blower thing near the front of the map going across the black platform, and I think that actually looks pretty cool. I like the way that turned out. I'm not quite done with it yet. I'll go back to it, but for now, that's good enough. And you can see that I'm starting to go through slowly, add that more detail that I'm trying to go for as the map very slowly, too slowly, is coming together. And man, scenery takes a while. Scenery can take a while. I'm also trying to add, like, not, you don't only want a variety of kind of like different sceneries and textures and everything to make the map look good and unique, but to also help the player memorize the route, as you know, they can remember, like, oh yeah, this is where the big dark bubble turn is happening, then after the big dark bubble turn this happens. And you can kind of use the scenery as landmarkers for different elements, and it helps the player learn the map, remember the map as they drive through a couple times. This really helps that process, and the less memorizing I have to do, the better. There was a reason I got the small comedic parts in all of the drama plays that I was a part of. But here I'm just trying to add, I guess, like light accents to everything, trying to get a good variety of color, good variety of textures, all that good stuff. And I'm really liking the way this is turning out so far. I was very impressed with myself, if I'm being honest. But all because you play something doesn't mean that you have to keep it. So, just like with the route, you can make adjustments to things you don't like. And I was not a big fan of how I put those stands there. Just seemed a little clunky, so I decided to try to move them, give more of an accent to this back wall here. And honestly, the biggest thing that I am struggling with on this right now is just trying to cover those blank empty wall spaces. And if you are working on scenery and you are not sure what to do, then just look at different places, see if you have just kind of like a blank wall section, and think about different ways, stuff that you can do to cover it up. Because scenery is there to add a bit of visual flair, and it's not very exciting to just look at a blank wall space. And so if some really good places to start, as I said, trying to fill in those blank wall spaces, and also trying to make the track itself look more structurally sound. But even when I look to fill in empty wall spaces, you'll notice that even here I place some blocks more forward, and that's to give that little extra bit of variety in the depth, kind of the field of view. In my opinion, helps make it a little more interesting. And then I'm going to add some light features here as well, as the when we calculate shadows, this area will be a lot darker, and so this will help it stand out, as this is a new session from last time, so the shadow calculating did not carry over. And that's one thing you can do, is once you calculate shadows, if it's too dark to really continue working, you can just exit out, reload back in a map. I'm going to make some of these lights green, keep some of them white for that little bit of splash of color. And I'm basically going to take that design and do it for the rest of these. And so I know I've said before that I am definitely not a scenery person, and I 100% stand by that. I'm not the biggest fan of just sitting down and working on a bunch of scenery. I get lost. And part of the reason why I get lost is just because I don't really know what to do a lot of the time. It can be very challenging to come up with interesting things to do each and every time. And that's a lot of where I struggle with scenery, is just the idea department. But as I've said before on the channel, just kind of the best way to learn, at least in my opinion, is to just do it. You know, just try different things. Some will work, some will not work. If it doesn't work, you can change it. You can always ask for feedback. Oh, and then I remembered that this area specifically was a little dark, so added a bit more light to it. And speaking of lights, let's go ahead and add some more light accents. I honestly have no idea if I just went completely overboard on the lights here. Maybe I did. Maybe I went a little crazy. But, you know, I think it looked pretty good in the end, so maybe it's not too bad. Okay, maybe this part specifically, I went I went a little crazy with the lights. You know, lights are fun to build with, so I can't really blame me for that. And so the one thing that I did learn from building with this map is really that you can go all out. Like there's nothing because obviously for this I'm trying to pull out all the stops. I'm purposely trying to build a map that just leaves nothing behind. Oh, and then I noticed that these are poking through the wall, so I'm going to hide those with more light accents. Obviously, we did not have enough. And yes, I will be adding even more light accents as well. Yeah, the big thing that I wanted to do for this map is I had never really gone full out on the scenery before. And this was my goal here. Anything that I could think of, I was going to try to put into it. And I have finally done enough that I feel like I could start working on the big room. This one's going to be challenging just because like it's a big room, you know, there's a lot going on. There is a lot of space to cover, and I'm going to struggle with that. You'll see that a bit later. But for now, I wanted to kind of have a big pillar in the middle as kind of not really like a crown piece that you're driving around, but just a big piece of scenery. And if you thought that little tunnel had a lot of lights in it, oh, you have not seen anything yet. I'm not sure if there was a way I could have macro blocked this out, but yeah, this basically was me sitting there counting how many times I notched up on my mouse wheel and then just placing a light where whenever I counted, like, I don't know, 4 or something. So it's just me repeatedly counting 4 over and over again. And then once I was done with the first column, it wasn't that bad. You just had to line up the lights to the neighbor and everything worked out. Honestly, watching it sped up again, it doesn't look that bad, but I remember this being pretty tedious. And of course, I'm going all out. Of course, that's not going to be it. I have to add more ring lights. And I remember this specifically being a feature I've seen on other maps where you have the pillar surrounded by the circle lights, and I thought I would steal it. I'm sorry. I mean, thought I'd be inspired by it. Which is you know, perfectly fine. This is a pretty generic feature, so it's not like I'm stealing like someone's entire scenery. Because there's a right way and a wrong way to be inspired by various elements. And if it's something that's just generic as, you know, ring lights around a pillar, then yeah, you know, go ahead and implement it. Or various other things like, you know, using lights to make a border or something like that, you know? I know I'm definitely not creative enough with scenery to really make something that no one has ever seen before. I'm just trying to make something that looks halfway decent. That is my goal first and foremost. So I've got the green and the yellow on the outside, one of the few areas that I do add yellow as that accent color. And then I'm going to light up the inside with white. Make sure all of the accent colors are there. I think in the future, I'm definitely not going to go as all out as I did for this. But I think I've said this before, where as I'm doing this, I'm just listening to YouTube videos on in the second monitor. Because I do this mapping, I do tend to listen to quite a few video essays every once in a while. I'll be in a chat with my friends as well, but that can be pretty distracting. So if I want to get a lot of work done, I tend to just turn on some sort of video essay on the second monitor and just chill out, do some mapping. Which I know I've said this before, you should be doing that with this video. Perfect video to zone out to some mapping too. But finally, with that, we are done with the big centerpiece light pillar, and I love the way it turned out. I think it looks super cool. But now, just like with the first room, I am going to struggle a bit to to make this part illuminated. Because I know I kind of shot myself in the foot with this section here, with the fact that this is my main support color is black, which means, oh boy, this is going to be super dark, and part of the actual route itself relies on the player driving on black platform, and it can be very difficult to tell what the features are if it's just everything's just way too dark. So I'm gonna spam some lights. I'll figure out how to make them pretty and stand in and everything later. But for now, just like with the first room, my goal is just to light things up. I'll figure out the details later. Yeah, just pretty much spamming lights. I'm going to calculate shadows here. And how does it look? Oh, calculating shadows is actually taking a while now. And it's a good start, but oh my god, that is a black void right there. And players would kill me if they had to actually drive through that. So I'm going to select the lights that give off light. Unfortunately, since I used a custom plastic piece here, there's not a light piece that is big enough to go through that entire curve. So I'm just going to have to place these vertical lights where I can on the plastic piece. Sometimes you have to compromise a little bit. And now, does that give off enough light? Absolutely not. Nowhere near enough. So I'm just find where I can put even more, and I am constantly just placing more lights, calculating shadows. I decided to come back to that because I'm not entirely sure where to put more lights in. as with it being so dark, I definitely need to add light borders to the rest of the black platform, as at the very least, this is going to help players dictate where the turns are, where the edges are that they can't go. And it is actually really dark in here. I'll work on everything later, but black platform is starting to look a little bit better. I'll have to go through and add even more lights a bit later, but for now, it's doing not too bad. Just kind of looking around. Honestly, a lot of this is just me admiring the work that I've done so far, because I've never gone this hard on the scenery before. I'm proud of myself. Okay, I can be proud of myself. Pat myself on the back. I think I did pretty well. And then taking the themes that I've taken from that I started doing in the other rooms, bringing them here as well, such as outlining the various holes in the roof. And I actually really liked how that turned out as well. I'll touch more on this in the future, probably later on in this video. But I feel like, as much as I am loving the scenery that I am doing, there is one glaring weakness that I feel like I have here, and that is, I guess, how, darn it, I should have thought of how I was gonna word this before I started talking this, speaking this sentence. But I guess a lot of the scenery stuff, I don't have a lot of cohesion other than color scheme, and that is something I'll work on in the future. But as for right now, I think this is looking pretty good. Speaking of cohesion, I decided to make a little pillar and have that tie into the large pillar in the center of the room as well, to help a little bit with that cohesion, as I am recognizing that it just kind of seems like a bunch of different ideas scattered about, which, I mean, that is 100% true, but you know, you gotta like pretend you kind of know what you're doing. So after that, I closed out the map, restarted it, and that way I have a lot. I can see the shadows aren't calculated. I can see a lot better. This way I can spam so many more lights. I'm lining the entire roof with these lights. So hopefully with this, it will not nearly be as dark. I'll be able to see what's going on even in some of the empty areas. And I figured for this turn here, I could use these lights that are in the item pack directly above them. Hopefully that'll give enough light to help the players through them and not just completely struggle. Good enough, not perfectly lined, but you know what? Good enough, good enough. That was also my motto for the work that I did when I worked at a 5-star casino resort. You know, 5 stars, they want to be super fancy. And then the motto of the work that I did is just, good enough. At least it better be good enough. I was the only barista there that actually showed up on time. But anyway, moving on to a new section of the map, I decided to start tackling this kind of abstract grass hill thing. I knew I wanted that to be directly underneath the I guess one of the larger holes in the roof, as the sunlight is coming in, giving the hill what it needs, I guess, like the grass and the eventually I'll add trees and stuff. Add supports underneath everything to make it look, well, I guess more supported. Added some more abstract elements. And of course, more lights, because I am constantly looking for excuses to add more lights. Everything is very dark, and that is one of the pitfalls that you have to be aware of if you are building inside a giant building like this. And adding a bit more lights to closer to the track, that way the players can actually see what they're doing. They might appreciate that. At least I like it when I can look at the what I'm driving on, what I'm about to drive. I had to do some upside down plants, because who doesn't love upside down plants? And plus they're green. I'm literally just pretty much taking everything green and trying to figure out a way to fit it into the map. Definitely not the most cohesive scenery theme throughout, but you know what? It works. I'll take it. Just trying to add more of a base that outside of this structure here. That way it's looks a little more supported, and it's not just black wall meets black floor. I'll do the floor later, but oh boy, that floor was tough. I had to come up with a few ideas to do for the floor. And I've kind of figured out a good excuse where if I have those blank green triangle pieces, or not triangle, just the blank green spaces, it's a good excuse to have a light pole sticking out of it. So another excuse to add more lights. I'll always take that, especially with especially with this map. And a decent way to cover large wall sections is maybe just like a cool sign that does stuff. You can always change it later, but just going through the options now, seeing what I like, seeing what I don't like. I like the caustic. That was the more swirly stuff rather than the raindrops, but I feel like I always use caustic on my signs, so I decided to try the raindrops for now. I can always change it later if I end up just not liking it. Here I'm going for an abstract structure, just some more or less something to fill in the space. Plus I haven't used much green plastic, so I can always put that in. And now that I've built more of the abstract stuff, I have to make it look like it's actually supported. Not quite going for that floaty sci-fi look. Ignore the when I say stuff like that, just ignore the reset blocks that are just floating in the middle of the circles. Those don't apply. And plus, this is an area I'm just looking to fill, so making things look more supported will help fill it out, and then adding some light in the middle, because I don't know how much the player will actually be able to see this structure given how dark everything is. And I think I did a decent job placing lights around and everything, because later on, going through map review and everything, no one complained that it was ridiculously dark, so I'll take it. Gotta be really careful with those shadow bugs. In this, I decide to, of course, keep the green, and this is a design that I will use throughout, because as hard as it is to cover blank walls, it's sometimes a little harder to cover blank corners, and this is actually a decent way, I found, at least I like the way this looked. Uncovering those just kind of blank corners that are just there. But once I'm done with that, it is back to building more light rails. It's, yeah, I'm just kind of hopping around doing whatever I feel like at the moment. But also I'm still specifically trying to keep at least some semblance of individual goals in mind, because it is very easy to feel overwhelmed. And I think that was my biggest problem with scenery in the past, is I just, what on earth do you do? And so now I'm just going to take it one step at a time, finally finish these light rails. I think I ran out of ideas for what to do next, so I can always come back to this. Add those extra supports. And at the very least, players will now be able to tell the outside wall of where they're supposed to go, or I guess like not supposed to go. I wish there were lights that could cover kind of that S shape of the slope downward that I have there, but unfortunately there aren't, so I just kind of left it blank, and I've had no one complain about it so far, so that's good. And honestly, I really like the way these light rails came out. I might have to use these in future designs, or figure out maybe like different variations. I want the supports to go all the way to the floor. I think that looks a bit better than just having it end right there. Calculate shadows, see how that looks, and the room is looking a lot more lit up, and that's really good. So here I'm just gonna check out my GPS, and I'm paying attention to how everything looks, how dark the track is, and how the scenery is looking so far. Obviously, I've not worked towards the ending, and now I'm probably going to add what is simultaneously one of my favorite features, and absolutely the feature that I it it's weird. You'll see. It's pretty heavy, and if someone has FPS problems, I 100% expect it to be because of this element. But I've sent this through a map review a few times at the point of me recording this, I guess like the audio right now, and I've no one's ever complained about FPS, so I'm hoping that that is the case. I did cut some other things that I wanted to add to save on FPS, because that is something you do have to worry about with huge scenery projects like this. But yeah, this is what I'm talking about when I say this is going to be this could potentially tank some FPS here. Oh yeah, I am going to make this entire tub look like it is filled with these bubbles. So I'm going to skip forward, because I don't think you want to watch me do that for like 20 minutes even sped up, because this took a while. And I'm just doing the top layer. This is not completely filled. That would be way too much. I'm just doing the top layer to hopefully, make it look like it's filled and whatnot. Change some of the colors to green. That way we get that nice color variation in there. And now I'm going to add some more bubbles falling down from those bubble generators right there. So trying to keep that theme that's been popping up every once in a while. I go through, and I call these the bubble falls, and I actually really like them. They kind of come out of nowhere. There's not much else in the map besides just like a couple other bubble generators that would suggest to something like this, but I try to tie it in somewhere else. You'll see it later on at the finish, but that's not for a little while. So try to add some moving parts as well. And I like the way it turned out. Pretty neat, if I do say so myself, which I do. Just trying to adjust it, make it look pretty good. After that, I don't really know what to do, so I am back to building more light rails on the side, this time on this platform. since the walls go away, I don't want the players thinking that you just go straight ahead, and these light rails should help guide the player through this wide platform drift here, make that a little bit easier. Unfortunately, those light pieces do just kind of hang down off the side. I'll do something about it later, but for now, I just got to do that. And then I realized I placed some of these light poles not where I wanted them to actually go. I have to fix that real quick. Now this is going to work. Got to change the colors. And I know I've said this before, but scenery shouldn't just be there to look good, but scenery also should be there to help guide the player. It should help add intrigue to what your map is doing, but if players are just completely confused on what is going on with the map, or the scenery is so loud it's kind of blinding and it's really hard to drive the map after the scenery, then it might be going a little overboard. You might want to quiet some things down. But here I'm taking the giant blank wall, and I'm trying to figure out something to put here. I want a variety of depth. That way some elements closer to the player than others have that interesting, just keep it visually interesting. And I'm going to put giant signs in the background. I know that's going to be pretty loud visually, but I do have a plan for this. Because after I change this to a nice loud green, or I guess a mix of green and black, I'm going to add some stuff in front of it. That way it helps block off the light a little bit and it's not just completely overwhelming. Yeah, just trying my best to put in various designs, just like ideas just scattered throughout. I know the map itself is probably going to get, some people are just going to find the map more visually cluttered, but I think even if I don't know what I'm saying. Sorry. What I'm trying to say is that even if this map isn't turning out to be the most cohesive, I guess like scenery wise, this is going to help me so much in the future just with coming up with various ideas, and I can pick and choose various parts that I really liked about this and thinking like, oh, I would really like this element just expanded over the entire like map and route and stuff. That's already happened. I have started working on my next route after this. To give a little bit of a warning, it is a plastic route. And of course, I have to justify that it's made out of plastic, so I have to add like maybe some plastic bounces. And maybe things you can only do on plastic. And I do take the idea of the bubbles and spread it throughout the plastic roll. Hopefully, I haven't really started working on the scenery yet, but hopefully, I'll do that. And the map's going to be called Bubble Bath, and it'll be great. It's squeaky clean fun. But for now, you saw that I added some trees because, of course, they're green. I have to add them. I had everything green. It also helps make those hills a bit more visually interesting as well, a bit more texture, variety of texture. My scenery video, really trying to get those variety points. Then here, just adding some signs in the background. Even though the sign itself is black, you see like a bunch of like words, text on the screen as well. That's going to add at least a little bit of background texture. And here I am going to add kind of a big piece on this wall that I want to be pretty interesting. Going to require some free blocking. I don't often do free blocking, but I can do it. Although I think I mess up my spacing here, so I have to go back and fix the spacing. As far as building, I do try to pretty much stick to vanilla blocks on grid. I honestly, just working with free blocking is kind of tedious, but I mean, you can see that I'm just slowly just trying my best to place things where I want them, aligned with everything. I mean, it's not too bad. It can just be I don't want to do like entire routes of just free block scenery. That seems awful. I don't know how other people do it. But you can definitely go see what I'm going for now, of just kind of like a big jumbotron with an interesting border. I'll change this a little bit later. You'll see what small things I add, but for now, add some more trees. I think upside down trees, of course, they're gonna look cool. You're like, whoa, trees aren't normally upside down. This must be a pretty cool map. That's the goal, at least. Adding a little bit of a frame, and I do decide to go keep the black with the caustic there, and I decide to change that to the caustic as well. So I do go back to the caustic. I like it better. I Now that I think about it, I'm not entirely sure if I ever went and changed the sign that is on the other side of that support structure. The sign on the other side of the support structure might still be raindrops, even after me finishing the map. Yeah, so once I'm done with that, add the little bit of white there for a bit of an accent color. Here, I'm trying to figure out what on earth I'm going to do with the floor, and I came up with an idea. So I'm going to have the tub. I'm going to cover it, of course, in green. What else? What other color would I even use? And I'm going to have the bubbles kind of spill out onto the floor. And that way I can cover kind of a large area of the floor and still have it hopefully be somewhat interesting. And I got more moving parts in there. I got them turning against each other. That way, you get a nice little bit of symmetry there. And oh no, my tub has a leak, spilling out all the way onto the floor. What am I gonna do? Gotta call someone in to fix that. But yeah, I skip forward again. That way you don't just have to watch me place a bunch of bubbles on the floor. And here, oh, that seems like a pretty good place to place more lights. I'm going to add some more white pipe on these support blocks here. That is a thing that I'm going to keep doing when I use those support blocks. I'm going to put the white pipe in the middle. I think that looks pretty good. And oh wow, this area is dark. This area definitely needs some lights. So I'm going to add a bit of signs here. I know those aren't lights, but it'll help a little bit. And then I'll add more lights here. But not too bad, not too bad. And continuing on from that, I'm putting in some more crowd, bleachers, stands thing. Just trying to help fill out some of the area. That way it's not just a completely blank floor, and then adding supports to whatever I add. And that's kind of my technique now. I'm taking blank spaces and just trying to figure out how to fill them. So here we're back in the first big room. And I don't know why those supports don't like to autocomplete, Yet these supports, they will autocomplete, so I don't know. I guess I just have to place them one by one, which, nah, it's a little tedious, but it's fine. It's fine. And of course, because I have grass blocks, I have to add trees. Trees are green. So here I want to add a light feature to the entrance, but I can't, there aren't lights big enough to, I guess, wrap around those blocks. So instead, what I do is I add these two straight lights to help me line up what is going to be in the middle. And then I go from there, line it up on both of those straight poles, and there we go. Lined up in the middle. And I thought it was kind of clever. But now I'm going to have some light spam in the entrance, make like a tunnel of lights. Counting out how many spaces I want each one to be, so I have a nice even pattern. And I'm just gonna skip ahead here, because I placed down lights. You know, you get it, you get it. There's gonna be more lights that I place down. And I do apologize if I sound a little stuffy. I am sick while recording this right here. Hopefully it's not too bad. I don't feel too sick, but you know, just just a little bit. But here I am finally working on this last room slash area, starting a little bit of progress with that, and I want kind of a big piece in the center here coming out of the hole in the roof that the track is wrapping around. Just kind of building the outside support structure, and you'll see what this is. I do like the way it turned out, but I am going to next use these window panes, free block them to stand up. Trying to make sure that I line it up perfectly in the center. They do poke a little bit out of the side, but honestly, I don't hate the look. I actually kind of like it. I'm going to try to enclose this entire section. We kind of have some empty space at the top, but I'll fix that in just a moment. First, I got to place all of these. Yep, so it just takes a moment. And then now I'll just bump down the ceiling. And then it got rid of some of the supports, so I do have to replace them. I know there's one more side that's missing. I'll fix it later. I'll catch it later. But for now, I do miss it. And now I'm going... my idea for this was kind of like a bubble thing. Kind of almost like a lava lamp, honestly. Just adding a bunch of bubbles in this column. I think it looks pretty cool. And add the variety of colors as well. I say variety of colors. There's two. Green and white. Main color scheme, you know? And then using the smaller bubbles to fill out the space as well. And I really like the way it looked. But now I am finally going to tackle the fact that the floor is just... It's the biggest flat space in left right now. So I'm finally going to try to figure out something with this. And I figured a good starting point would be to not make it flat anymore. So I'm going to add a bit of elevation, kind of make it a bit more uneven, and then I'm going to add a few more decoration blocks as well. And already, I think making the floor a bit uneven is making it look better, in my opinion at least. And one type of block that I haven't really used are the reset blocks, and they are green, so it's time. It's time to use them. So I just kind of spam them around real quick. Got some slant ones as well, leaning up against the wall. And this, I try something interesting. So I want So I know I can go into the mesh modeler and edit the face of a block, and I'm gonna look around, see if there's any cool green texture that I can try to use for the floor. And after, because I mean, there's, you can see the number, there is 26 pages of these different textures, and I'm going all around trying to see if there's anything that I do end up liking. And I do settle on something. So I do pick, there is a green light. I think it's this one. Yeah, I settle with this one here, and I'm going to try to spam the bottom floor with that. And I like how it looks initially. And I'm going to place it all around. And you do notice that, well, if you did notice, I did say initially, and so I spam this all across the floor, and I take a couple screenshots, send it to some people for feedback, and I take a look at it, just, get a variety of opinions, see if it looks good, calculate shadows, of course, that way you can get an accurate representation. So I take a few screenshots, send it to some people, and I don't like it anymore. It's a bit too loud. It's like, I don't really want the highest brightness point of the entire room to be the floor, because then that can be pretty distracting, especially when you're trying to keep your eyes on the route. So I just decide to go with good old grass. It's green. I've used it in other areas of the room, and, well, throughout the entire map, and it's just, I think it turned out a lot better. Makes things not quite as loud. And I decided to go a little simpler to cover that wall. I placed a sign for now, and then a couple lights on these arches here. And then I'm going to add a bit more texture, adding white pipes to these blocks here. And then I believe, yep, this corner here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use this design a lot, on a lot of corners. I think it's a good way to fill out just the bare corners. And with scenery, you do want at least like some sort of running theme throughout everything. So I'm going to try this as my running theme. And just to make it a little different from the sign right next to it, I just make it green. Everything's green. So I put a frame around the sign, and I actually kind of like the way it looks. It's simple, but it's something. It adds some variety without being too loud, and I like it. I like it. So I do the same thing over here. And I think the first room is just about done. So here we are by the bubble falls, as you can see, and I'm doing the corner trick again. Because it's just good. It's reliable, It's all reliable. And I just copy copy the blocks over there. And for each one, I do try to come up with like its own little pattern. I don't just copy and paste every single pattern in there. I'm just gonna continue filling this out. And I like the way it looks. After that, I decided to take care of this bare little area right here, and I'm going to do a little bit of hill spam, but at different heights. And I'm also going to mix it with something else that you'll see in just a moment. But just building the support structures. But I decide that, oh yeah, well, here are the reset blocks that I add. And they don't quite line up. I didn't use the right slant blocks for that, so I'm going to find the platform by slope and use that to support the reset blocks. And there we go. Looks a bit better. But because I am using those, I am going to use these different support structures with the added texture. And they don't go all the way down to the ground, but that's okay because no one has to know. No one's going to know that they don't go all the way to the ground. Especially now. No one's going to know now. So once again, since I am using these supports, I am going to put the white pipe in them. Because honestly, I just like the way it looks. But now I notice, you know, I could probably put some lights in that. Because when in doubt, you just want to add more lights. You know, it's easy to add like an accent trim. It's just easy. It's easy scenery to add lights, okay? Don't blame me, okay? It works well. But to me, I don't want to necessarily put lights all the way to the ground, so I make this more of a tunnel instead of just an arch. Help fill out the space a little bit. And that way I can also add lights underneath, because if it's one thing I think this track needs, it's more lights. Look at that. Doesn't that look beautiful? I think the lesson I'm learning is when in doubt, just spam lights. I notice the roof is looking a little bare, so I'm going to add some upside down hill blocks to the corners here. Try to help fill in that area. Not too much, just a little bit, just enough in the player's view. And then I have these big blank walls, so I'm going to put in more of those signs that are easy with the border that I actually like the way it looks. I'm gonna do that over here as well, but I've got to line up the elevation. So beautiful. Look how great that looks. I don't know, maybe you find it maybe you find it boring. But you know, when you have like such I do feel like I kind of shot myself in the foot a little bit by having just this absolutely massive area. This is a lot. This is a lot for me to try to handle, and I'm trying, you know. Some things are going to work out better than others, but I notice here's another corner that I can put this type of sign in. All I know is that for my next map, I'm going simpler scenery. I'm not going all out like I am here for my next map. Try to spruce up the finish just a little bit. I decided to calculate shadows, see how everything looks, and it's looking pretty good. Oh, I actually kind of like that shot. That shot's kind of cool. This area is a little dark though. I haven't really gone for many lights. But for this, I am adding an elevation to the floor to kind of add a justification reason as why all of the little bubbles that are spilling out of the tank, why they are contained to that one area. And also, I'm going to do the same type of variation thing that I did in the first room that you saw not too long ago. Yep, so we're adding some elevation to the floor. I am starting to skip around a bit more because one, this video is super long. Like this video is starting to get super long, and honestly, you don't at this point you get it. You know, like what my building flow is, and you know what I'm doing. You don't need to see every single block being placed. That might be a little much. But once again, going with the grass on the floor, and also I'm gonna add a third level to the variation. And once I'm done doing that, time for those reset blocks. There we go. Get some slant ones, some flat ones, all that good stuff. To add some variety to the floor so it's not super boring. And now I am going through and I'm adding more structure to the underside of this, because this is a part of the map that the player itself is driving under. So you want it to look a little more supported. So I added some blocks underneath the track, and because there's more blocks, I can add more lights now. I mean, you understand. I think the more light, the better it looks. No, without, like, there's no fail to it. And that's the motto I'm going by. So here I am finally in the last room. I haven't really done much to this room yet, but I finally I finally made my way back here. I can see the ends because oh boy, this is taking a while. And because we have a giant blank wall here, not sure what I'm doing here. Like I just need to fill it in. It's fine. It's not that big of a deal. Change it to the appropriate texture. It looks bad now, but that's okay because it is just going to be the background for the audience stands. And they will block most of the visual, so uh, can't won't even be able to tell. I did an arch underneath to support everything, but that's kind of a large blank area, so I do this instead. A smaller arch, so it's not so insanely bright. Yeah, and I'm liking the way that looks, and of course we have another corner, so we can do this again. Yeah, you do see the flickering, but that is going to be hidden behind well, I placed one in normal block mode and one in ghost block mode, and that gets rid of the flickering. Yep, so just placing in the supports. You know the deal. You know the deal with this. Yep, and I'm taking a look back, and oh, of course, wait, hold on. We still have these support structures here, so of course I have to add the white pipe in the middle to add some of that texture. Honestly, I do like the way that looks. Yeah, and taking a look back, I like the way it turns out. Here, I'm gonna try to add a little bit more detail to the roof. It's I mean, detailing the roof isn't super important because oh, I'm also struggling, struggling to find the specific placement where I can place the block. But the roof can be a little bit of a tricky challenge because you don't want it to be the main focal piece because you want the players to actually focus on the route that they are driving. But at the same time, you don't want to just be blank because you want to avoid those flat, just uninteresting pieces. And here, I'm also going to add a little bit of trim to the inside of this because I don't have a piece that'll fit on the outside. So the inside will do. And speaking of big, flat, boring pieces, I am going to do the floor trick, what I've been doing for this section of the map as well as adding that inside trim. And I noticed this area over here, I could use some sprucing up. It's just, finding a blank area, trying to fill it in with something interesting. And to keep kind of the bubble theme going, I'm going to add another bubble blower right here. Spilling out over the track, just trying to have the scenery interact with the map itself a bit more. There's another thing, I know I went for more abstract here, but you want to be a little careful. There is a pitfall where you just add a bunch of stuff around the map, and yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff around the map, but there's nothing really tying the scenery to the map itself. And here I'm hoping for a little bit more interaction, I guess. But it is finally time to start working completely on this last little section here. And don't worry, this is not what it's just gonna look like. That's the background. Yeah, I'm going to copy what I did on that wall to keep that theme. And yeah, this is kind of like the final room. I want like the audience cheering, and also I didn't want the wall to be flat, so the audience will go here. Arches for support. And these nice little blocks here to add some more texture as well. So it's not just, once again, boring flat surfaces. And of course, since we use those blocks, got to keep with the theme of the map. We add some of that white pipe as well. And I really like the way that this is turning out. I actually like the look of the white audience stands better. So I'm going to replace the default with the specifically the white stands, as I think that looks pretty good. Helps keep things a little varied and keeps things a little bright against just the dark black walls. And of course, immediately I forget that I did that, and I go with the regular default stands for these. But here I'm going to do a little mini bubble pool thing for the finish. Just, trying to get the variety of colors, filling that in, making sure there's no blank spots. Got to keep some sort of a theme going, right? And now I'm going to work on, I'm basically going to copy what I did on the other side. I'm going to mirror it over on this side because, symmetry. Symmetry looks nice. Just counting the pattern, what I'm going to copy here. There we go. I'm just going to reconstruct it piece by piece. It's not really, I would not consider, I guess, like copying, pasting, using that tool here, just because this is such a tight area to be working in. And I only want the outside blocks. I'm not necessarily going to copy a bunch of stuff. But yeah, that design, I didn't really know what else to do for the corner, so I spam it in like every corner. And hey, I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to add this little narrow light beam here to help guide the player to the finish, because this is not a jump past. Hopefully it's going to, not really like subconsciously, but not obviously guide the player to the finish by having just kind of something that, even a small visual, just block that area off just mentally. And I'm going basically just kind of having these lights extend from the finish. And it's simple. I didn't really add much detail to these lights here, but when you're driving it, I think it actually looks really cool. So I'm really happy with the way that this turned out as well. And then I'm going to color each other one white. Just, for the variety of color, got to get the main and secondary colors in there as well. And then it's time for this blank space over here. This one was a little awkward. I'm not a huge fan of what I came up with, but it's something. And, the players only see it for a moment. It's at the very end. At that point, you aren't really paying attention to what the scenery has to offer anyway, so it's fine. It's fine. I'm kind of keeping a little bit with the what are they called? Lava lamp. That's what I'm trying to think of. The lava lamp theme by just having another light lamp thing. And I'm really good at commentating. I placed the green. It didn't really like the green, so I'm switching it to white, and I like that a bit better. And now, because I can, I'm adding more lights. And I noticed that the alignment is a little off at the end. We're going to have that little bit hanging down, but I think it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. So here I'm just lining up, placing where I want them to go, and then I'll just go through and add them all in with the elevation. And adding in more highlights. And going in more with the rings here. Just going to skip by that because you've honestly seen enough of me building rings, but you haven't seen enough of me building these corner pieces. So that's what I'm going to do. This one is a little different than the others because I'm going to be overlapping these. It's going to be 3 right next to each other, and this is a huge wall of screens, and I'm going to try to make it so it's not overwhelming. I'm going to try to put enough stuff in front of it, that way it looks more broken up, and it's not just absolutely massive like that. So I'm going to start with the usual, and then I'm going to section them off a little bit. And I think it's turning out pretty well so far. That really helps mute the wall and turn the green more into an accent color. And it is finally time to start, well, I guess not necessarily start working, because I did a little bit of work, but to finish up this entrance area, because it's boring. I've worked on every other room in this map, and yeah, it's time to spruce up the entrance. So of course, I've got to go with the theme of more lights. That's what this track has always needed. Always more lights. Just making sure everything is lined up properly. Oh, okay, no, never mind. We are back. We're back here. I'm probably, at this point, I was probably struggling for ideas on what to do for the entrance. And here I just decided to cover the blank walls with some symmetry of vertical sausage pieces. And this part is interesting. So there is one thing that I thought would be really cool for the map. And if you know what the name of the map is, I'm going to do a name reveal for the map right now. It's called Not So Plain and Simple. And basically, the idea that I have now for the scenery is that the roof of this entire thing is basically going to look like a very simple road grass map, and then you'll have the real map underneath. And that's just kind of the idea that I had for this. So here it is time to put in the roof map, I guess. And my original plan was to have kind of a secret checkpoint that you could run into in the beginning, double respawn, and it would put you up onto the roof to drive this course. I thought that'd be really cool, but I decided against it. The reason being is, if you look at the top left, there's going to be a number right underneath the American flag by my username in that green box. And that number, it's not a perfect number, but it's kind of basically how heavy the map is. And there's a tendency of, the bigger that number, the more likely it is that it's going to start big lag problems for some people. And you'll notice that that number is in the yellow. And this is the heaviest map that I've ever made. I don't know if it's going to cause problems for people. So I decided not to go super heavy on the double checkpoint respawns, all the link checkpoints that I would have to do to make this drivable both ways. And also, I didn't want to accidentally make the rooftop route faster, even though it is, like, it's spanning the entire, well, I wanted it to span the entire roof, but just driving it, I can tell you it is so much slower, but I didn't want to take that risk, you know? However, if you go to my club, the Struggle Bus, that's the name of my club, and you go to my ... maps folder, then there is a drivable rooftop route for this. I moved the start, and I put all the checkpoints up on top here, and that way, if you really want to drive this absolutely spectacular rooftop route that I put a lot of thought into, that I did not just spam certain blocks around. It's also why I'm trying also why I'm driving it here. But if you too would like to drive this absolute wonderful piece of art here, then you can find that in my club. Under the map, since the actual map is called Not So Plain and Simple, I thought it'd be fun if the map itself was called Plain and Simple. But you can see the checkpoints that I've placed here. I end up getting rid of those in the final cut. As I said before, this is a heavy map. I don't want it to lag out for people. Especially with all the lights that I've placed. I'm trying to be a bit careful. And I'm unsure if I ended up cutting it out, but you might notice as I'm placing down all these blocks for the scenery, I did initially have a lot of trees up here as well, but I I got rid of them. I just wanted to be careful. I wanted to prioritize the actual route itself and not just the like trying to get both the routes. Because one thing that I really did not want to happen is I did not want the rooftop route to just like be optimal or to ruin the below route to have so much space that it makes the map unplayable. Yeah, so it was a cool idea, but I think would have ended up taking up too much space. So you can see now I'm just trying to fill everything in, making it look nice and green, keeping with the color scheme, of course. It is really interesting to go back and to see like some of the ideas that work, some of the ideas that didn't work, and you're just like, oh yeah, I did try that, didn't I? To me, at least, it's fun. But of course, I built the map, so of course I'm gonna think it's fun. Yeah, I don't put too much work into this map here, but I think it actually turned out to be pretty fun. And, like I said, if you do want to give it a shot, you can see it in my club. All right, so we are just putting the final touches on the roof here. And, yep, I do put some trees on top, but not a lot. I want, everything in bulk to be at the bottom. And here, I'm actually done. It feels so weird. And if it seems sudden, yeah, so this is the intro. I didn't record myself making the intro because I figured, it wasn't it wasn't that important. But plain and simple, not so plain and simple. Oh, look at that. So good. So good. I know. How do I do it? Media Tracker Wizard. And this is the official GPS for Not So Plain and Simple. It's not the best time that I've gotten. I did end up driving a better time later after everything, but I'm not going back in and adjusting the GPS for it. It's a decent author time. And a decent run. So you know what? I'll take it. I'll take it. As you can see, the exit to the drifts are a lot wider now, so they are a lot smoother. And everything, there's just a lot of detail everywhere. I am so happy with the way that this turned out. I think the track looks really good. I think it drives really well. I love it. I love it. I'm proud of it, okay? It's definitely the best map that I've made. So that might be it for the building process, but I do want to go over a little bit on what I have done with the map since then, because you might have noticed little hints of it here and there, but I've been sitting on this map for probably over a month at this point. And the reason why is because I was submitting this map for track of the day, and I ended up getting reviewed by Nadeo, and it was not selected for a track of the day. It's been over a month since it's been reviewed. It wasn't selected, which I am a little maybe more than a little disappointed about. I really thought that this was basically a guaranteed track of the day, so did basically nearly everyone on the map review server as well said that this is guaranteed to be track of the day. So a little disappointed about that. I was talking to someone about it. I actually ran into Shorty in the map review server and got to talking a little bit, and he suggested that I put this map in a second time for review. And that kind of caught me a little by surprise. I forgot that you could actually do that. So in case you don't know, you can actually submit the same map multiple times without changing, as long as it gets through map review every single time. So I put my map through the map review gauntlet again in hopes of getting a second review, and I never got that second review. It's been about 2 review cycles, about 2 weeks, because the person who does review for Track of the Day reviews it once a week. So it's been 2 cycles of that, and I've seen other people post their screenshots of their map getting reviewed, and their map had either a lower score or less votes, sometimes both lower scores and less votes. And my map still was sitting there without a review, and I think at this point, it's just not going to get selected. I don't know what I could have done for this map to be Track of the Day. I'm not going to dwell on it too much, because once you start getting into the what ifs, especially if you don't have solid answers, you can start leading yourself down like some unhealthy thought trains about, like, not being good enough or anything like that. So I'll just leave it as I was disappointed, don't really know why, don't understand, but tech is a really competitive mapping style, not just driving it but also mapping it. It's very popular. So maybe when my map was reviewed, it was out of the 7 slots that they had available, mine was the 8th best map, and so I just barely lost out on the spot. But that does mean that I am officially releasing this map. As of me publishing this video, I have uploaded it to TMX. So if you would like to drive this map yourself, take a look around, look at all the scenery that you just watched me build here. Link to the map on TMX will be in the description down below. And before I finish off the video, I do want to go over a few lessons that I learned, what I think the map did really well on. But also, despite this being what I think is the best map I've built and my favorite, I do think there was some room for improvement. So I'd like to go over that as well. I think the biggest thing that this map taught me was that I really need to just be patient throughout the process. There were multiple points where I just wanted to give up on the map and delete the file and forget about it, but I didn't want all the screen recordings to go to waste, so I just kind of kept through it, and I'm really glad I did. I know I said that a lot, but it's true. I am very proud of how this turned out, and a lot of it was just gathering feedback from other players, going through multiple iterations, keeping what you liked, getting rid of what you did not like, and that went for both the route and scenery. And I think in the future, I am not going to shy away from tech as much as I have in the past. I think it'll be a little while before I build another full dedicated tech map, but thankfully it's one of those styles that is really easy to sprinkle into other maps and everything like that. So I'm definitely going to take some of those turns. I'm not going to shy away from building drifts as much as I have in the past, in fear of that they would be awkward. And as for what I think the map does really well, I think the map is pretty simple, but since those exits to the drifts are so wide, you can risk so much going for the drifts. You can just full send these turns and then just go for it. And that is really where the map shines, is as you're learning it, it might seem a little boring because there is so much room to drive. But once you get better at the map and you really start pushing for that author time or that world record, that's where the map, at least to me, becomes fun. And at the very least, if a map is nothing else, it should be fun. And I found the map pretty fun to drive. But besides the route, I think the scenery, I've been saying it this entire video here, I love it. I love the scenery so much. It looks so good. I'm super proud of it. Just all the little details. I've never added this much detail into scenery before, and I am so glad I did. I just kept working until it just ended. There was nowhere else to add scenery. I mean, I could have kept adding stuff, but there is the file size limit that I have to be a little careful of. And going off of that, this was the easiest time that I've had getting a map through map review. Normally, I have to take my map down and restart the voting process because I've got a couple people that decided to just vote 1 star and completely tank the rating, but that's a conversation for another day. This, I never received a 1-star vote, and both the times that I tried to get the map reviewed, Despite auto queue, despite some people just not liking tech, I never got a 1-star review, and that's never happened to me before. And I think the effort and the care and the love that I put into this map really showed, and I think those are the strengths that I have. But that does not mean that there aren't weaknesses. So I think starting with the route, because I don't know, that was part 1, whatever. The main weakness that this map has is that the difficulty itself is pretty easy. Unless you really are just pushing every single drift to the max, it can feel like you make a bit of a drift and then you just press forward until the next drift. The map itself is just a little too plain and simple. So I think going forward, I'm going to try a little harder to just go for it. Not necessarily play it as safe, but to go for these strange elements to keep the map a little more interesting. And then as far as the scenery goes, I really like it, but I think I went a little too overboard. I think I went a little too big. You'll notice outside of the route itself, I included lots of empty spaces for me to build stuff in. And I don't think I had to include all that empty space. I don't think the map would have been worse if I just shrunk the walls in a little bit and made my job a little easier by not having to have all this empty stuff that I try to fill in with whatever. And sticking with the simple color scheme, I think it was fine, but that doesn't mean that I needed to grab every single object that was somewhat green and shoved it into the same map, because the green from the lights look a bit different from the green from the signs, and the green from the signs looks a bit different from the green from the hills, which looks a bit different from the green from the reset block, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there are, despite keeping that simple color scheme, I think some of the colors actually did end up clashing a little bit. So in the future, I think I'm just going to try to simplify the scenery, see what I can do to make scenery look good without having to go all out on everything. With that being said, of course, I'm still super proud of this map, and I would like to thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day. I mean, this is over 2 hours. That is crazy. But that's a lot of time to take out of your day to watch my video, and I just want you to know that I really do appreciate it. If you're interested in driving this map or any of the other maps that I've created, such as the rooftop route for this one, my club is called the Struggle Bus, and it holds everything that I've published. Let me know if you guys got anything out of me doing this. This was a pretty big project. I'm definitely not doing this for every single map that I've created, but if you would maybe be interested in something like this in the future, let me know. Might be something cool to do every once in a while. And if you're still here, chances are you probably enjoyed the video, at least to a certain extent, and I would appreciate it if you left a like and possibly subscribed. I'm trying my best to become a decent Trackmania mapper, and especially with this map, I think I'm well on my way. So if you would like to follow me on that journey, go ahead and hit subscribe. But with that, I've taken up enough of your time. Once again, thank you for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. I hope to see you here next time. But now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to give my voice a rest, and hopefully it'll be back to its full strength soon. Bye.